I will clarify, I did not say 3 scriptures, so, but, I mean, 3 is a lot, but, I'm a teacher, I love reading, and I get the pleasure and the honor to read 3 of the best scriptures, in my opinion. So you might be thinking, oh, this is going to take forever. It won't, I promise. I'm a preacher's kid, so we're always looking at the clock like, okay, pastor, we gotta make sure. Just kidding. But these are very beautiful words from 3 completely different sections of the Bible, and you will recognize them all as some of your favorites as well. So hear these words first from the Psalmist, a Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely, goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. Here ends this reading. The Newer Testament reading for this morning is from Revelation, chapter 21, beginning with verse 1. Hear these words: the new heaven and the new earth. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "See, the home of God is among mortals. God will dwell with them. They will be God's peoples, and God will be with them and be their God. God will wipe every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away." And the one who was seated on the throne said, "See, I am making all things new." Also, God said, "Write this, for these words are trustworthy and true." Then God said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty, I will give water as a gift from the spring of the water of life." Here ends this reading. The gospel reading this morning is from John chapter 13, beginning with verse 31. Hear these words: the new commandment. When he had gone out, Jesus said, "Now, the Son of Humankind has been glorified, and God has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in Jesus, Jesus will be glorified in God at once. Little children, I am with you only a little longer. You will look for me. And as I said to the people, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. You also should love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. Here ends this reading.
I'd like to invite the children forward for children's chat this morning. Come on down. How's everybody doing?
Well, you're going down the phone.
Well, going up, yeah, coming down. Yeah, works. Hi, Sanaya. Hi, Sayana. How's it going? Good. So do you talk about zones of regulation in school?
Yes.
Yes. You guys kind of know what zones of regulation? Sort of.
Well, you.
I don't have the picture of it. This was a thought on the way into church today that I'm going to roll with it today. So zones of regulation. Let's stand up.
At school today,
like you're having a conversation with some of your friends and you're kind of getting into an argument, you're trying to figure out what to do, and sometimes your teacher's like, take a big deep breath.
Yeah.
Daniel, play along, let's take a big deep breath. How about everybody take a big deep breath? Right? Because sometimes we need to get some more oxygen to our brain because we're just so caught up in the moment that we just need to find a moment to pause and to see what really the issue is. And by doing that, perhaps things will be made clear. Or maybe not, but then we can get some help, right? So as we figure out our zones and take a big deep breath, sometimes we find ourselves reaching for a Kleenex box. You guys can sit down with me. Because we find that we're sad, perhaps, and that we need a tissue to wipe our tears from our eyes. And Desmond Tutu wrote a story called God's Dream. And in the midst of this book, it talks about that sometimes we cry and God cries with us. And when we say we're sorry and forgive one another, we wipe away our tears and God's tears. Because we know that God is with us in the journey. Wherever we're at, whatever zone we're into, that God carries tissues and God's not above crying. And there's even a puppy and a kitty here that are giving kisses too. It could be our animals at home. So sometimes tissues are used when we're sick too, don't we? When we have a runny nose and we're not feeling so hot. And sometimes when we're very sick, we need to go to the doctor, right? Yeah. And our brains are just like our hearts and our lungs, and they need to be healthy. And sometimes when we're not feeling so good, we go to the doctor. And sometimes when we go to the doctor, I had a friend once who wasn't feeling so good. Her mind wasn't feeling so good. And the doctor gave her some medicine to help her feel better. And now my friend is home and she's feeling better and she's getting the support that she needs, because mental health means taking care of our whole body, our mind, our heart, our lungs, our legs, our fingers, our toes. It's a part of the whole body, and we need to take care of that. And sometimes in the midst of that we find ourselves crying, but we know that God is with us in the midst of all of that, because it's all connected. So let's take a moment and stand up for a second. Let's stand up. And here's another thing that we can do too, not enough room. Sometimes you gotta take a big deep breath with your arms. Raise your hands, and then sometimes you gotta bend over. Because that gets all the air moving in your body. So the next time we're having a hard moment with our siblings, right? Because that never happens, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Never. Yes, it does. Yeah, I know the truth. Yeah, I got it. Sometimes we just need to take a big, deep breath and to know that God is with us, even in that moment, Michael, right? Yeah. Let's take a moment to pray. Loving and gracious God, we give you thanks knowing that you walk with us in this journey and that you care about our whole body, our minds, our bodies, our spirits, our fingers, our toes, our hearts, our lungs. Be with us and help us to take care of ourselves and each other as we support one another in love. Amen. Thanks, friends, for coming down. The month of May highlights mental health awareness. Mental health is physical health. Our faith can positively impact and influence our communities when it comes to mental health awareness and breaking down the stigma associated with mental health. New science confirms what our ancestors in faith already knew. God's love has healing power. For emotional, social, and mental well-being, faith assures us of two protective factors: You are not alone, and you are loved. In today's world, this is a message that faith communities are uniquely positioned to share. Furthermore, our sacred stories are equipped in offering hope and encouragement in our everyday lives. As a faith community, we can provide critical spiritual care for the flourishing of God's people by breaking the silence and help end the stigma and shame of mental health challenges. The United Church of Christ Mental Health Network writes that spirituality is an essential part of the holistic approach to mental health and awareness and wellness. As the writer of Revelation says, God is the Alpha and the Omega. God is with us in the beginning and the end. No matter who you are or what our mental health diagnosis or where we are on life's journey, you are welcome. God's promise to be our God, and God is creating a new heaven and a new earth. God shows us all compassion and unconditional love, wiping away every tear from our eyes. Dr. Vicki K. Harvey, who is a member of the board of the UCC Mental Health Network, shared how individuals caught in the horrifying grip of mental health or mental illness are all around us. They are our friends and our co-workers, our family, churchgoers like you and me. They are beautiful in their gifts. We are beautiful in our gifts of love, talents, wisdom, humor, and then we're not so lovely. We can turn needy or angry or withdrawn or unreliable or demanding or ungrateful or incredibly sad. We awaken our fears, for indeed we are only a small degree of separation from the same demons wreaking havoc with our psyches. We make mincemeat of our generous impulse to help sometimes, because quickly we are aware of how huge the problem against our puny ability to act to make it all better. And we really wish we would be a part of that sometimes, and yet we are. And what we want for ourselves again and again and for each other is to regain control and self-sufficiency. And all this time we have a pandemic we're facing, and war and gun violence and rising costs, and the news and our senses are heightened. And did we really mean what we meant to say? Are we out of control? Why? And so we talk a lot about welcoming the other. We talk about no matter who you are, where you are on life's journey, you're welcome here. And often this is depicted as meaning people who do not look or sound like us racially or nationally, or who express their being in the world in ways that appear intrinsically different via their sexuality or their cultural mores. Making a commitment to find commonality and celebrate diversity in these various ways of being human is so critical to expanding our own spirit of living out God's mandate, and mostly of connecting with our own life force in all its manifestations. But arguably, our most significant struggle to love the other comes when we are in relationship with one who may look just like us on the outside, but inside goes to places we cannot fathom or follow. Jesus talked to his disciples about his final days in this farewell discourse in the reading from John this morning. He, the Savior of the world, was going. The only thing he was leaving, the only thing that was going to fill the void of his absence, the only thing capable of such a task was one command. He told them to love one another just as he had loved them. And that was it. The baton has been passed. You're it. Go. Love. And something tells me he was not referring to the easy kind of love. Denying oneself and taking up the cross daily, as stated in Luke chapter 9, verse 23, is custom made for our journey in our journey in loving those living with mental health conditions. Nothing about loving me is continuously easy. Nothing about loving the mentally ill will be continuously easy either. The church, though, has shared a few tender ways of living out this command towards those with mental health struggles, and Dr. Harvey shared some of those tender moments, and I suspect we can see how we have shared in those tender moments. A woman carrying in supplies for a potluck is approached by a young woman known to monopolize a lot of time with her needy rambles born of isolation and depression. She stops on the spot and sits and talks one-on-one with her, handing off her food to another. After a while, another woman joins and the first woman takes her leave. Thus, the caring is spread and becomes less burdensome for one person, prompting the urge to avoid the struggling young woman. It ends with several practical suggestions and promises to follow up later in the week. Contrast this with the wide walk around we've all done, the wide walk around people take to avoid being trapped with a person they did not plan to talk to. The individual is left literally stranded in a sea of Christians, their own island in a place where they had been promised community. Or there's this example. A group of marginalized people start attending church. They are noticeable for their adherence to a group that often dresses in odd clothing. They sometimes sit or lay outside as people are arriving for worship. For these behaviors, they had been asked to leave their previous church. At the new church, people show interest in them, invite them in to get to know them. They are given tasks in the various ministries, and at times their struggle may get difficult. They can flash with anger, regress, or become non-communicative. Over the months, however, as they find their place within the church family, they decide they do not want to wear their apparel identities. They enjoy bonding and identifying with others as they are, all because people looked past the outside and related to the living soul within. And then there's this example. An older man has been evicted from his home because of his mental illness and bad decisions. The church immediately jumps in with long and short-term solutions for him, everything from countless hours helping him move to attending court with him to make sure he understands the proceedings to offering shelter. His self-sabotage gets threaded through the expenditures of time, money, patience of the church community until a roommate is located that, as it turns out, also needs the gifts he has to offer. And together they form a stable unit that benefits both of them. Our instabilities, insecurities, and now what we are seeing as the effects of COVID-19 fatigue coupled with the instabilities of mental health conditions heightens our response, and often our response is a lack thereof. Quarantine fatigue is a mental health condition, and just as much as it takes energy to create a well-boundaried relationship with those of us with mental health conditions, we need to take the intentional time to reach out to our friends, family members, church family, and neighbors who may not even know that quarantine has had its effects until it's too late. Reaching out, connecting, simply saying hello, educating oneself, being a friend, thanking God for neurodiversity. These are everyday incarnations. These are the visibles of a God indwelling, God outreaching to those with mental illness. May we touch our own inner grace and open our souls soul's window to the one who awaits its healing balm. And may we know that we are never alone. God is with us in the journey. God is with us in our crying and our tears and wipes away every tear. And through the work of Jesus the Christ, we are called to love the other, even when it's